Right, now joining me on the line is comedian John Williams. John is also the author of the book My Son's Not Rainman and BBC Radio 4's Forethought and Pick of the Year. John, first things first, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Henry. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks very much for joining us. I want to start off on the book My Son's Not Rainman, because I understand that didn't start off as a book, did it? Was it a blog at first?
It was, but it was quite weird because it actually started off as a kind of comedy show, and then I wrote a blog just to go alongside it. And I think it turns out that I'm a better writer than I am a comedian, was what people were telling me, because the blog became more popular than me, really. And so I concentrated more on the blog, and then I got approached to turn it into a book, and then, and it just evolved from there, really.
Fantastic. And of course, the title itself, I mean, obviously it relates back to that film Rainman. I mean, it's one of those moments where you're not sure whether you're allowed to find something like that funny. I mean, do you kind of get that there is a sense of people with that dark sense of humour not wondering if they can laugh at something like that?
No, I know. It's true, actually. It was something that genuinely hadn't occurred to me at first, was that, and it was only as I delved into it more in the whole area of autism and comedy and whether it was allowed to be funny. And I genuinely, and still to this day, find it a little bit bizarre. And I think actually I go the other way, where I tend to think that actually it's a bit offensive to suggest that there isn't any humour in it, rather than to suggest that there is humour in it. And I think that, my son is one of the funniest people I know. And I suppose all I wanted the book to be about, and the show really, was just about the joy in our lives. I think sometimes you can get very bogged down, certainly being a parent sometimes of a child with additional needs, and I hate that kind of phrase, but sometimes you can get bogged down in it all. The system isn't always geared towards, and you're constantly fighting, and I just wanted people to know that there's joy in it all, and that it isn't all kind of doom and gloom, if you like, and that there's still this brilliant person at the centre of it all.
John, why did you decide to write that book and kind of focus on your son? Was it, obviously, as you said, you said he's one of the funniest people you know. Was there also that kind of sense where you wanted to bring issues of, obviously the phrase you use, special educational needs and things like that to the forefront of kind of, just discussion?
I think it was. I think it was wanting to change perceptions a little bit. I think sometimes people would see my son as, they wouldn't see past some of the behaviours. I think that sometimes they just see these, I don't know, they use phrases like challenging behaviours or difficult behaviours, and I just wanted people to kind of see this boy behind all that, and to let people, sometimes only those very close to him could see that, and it was just to let people know that inside everyone there is this brilliant person just waiting to shine. I have a line in the book, actually, that I talk about, where I say that we only really celebrate disability in this world when there's a skill involved. And I still agree with that. The Paralympics, they're amazing. They're an incredible thing, and they celebrate the skill and the aptitude of the athletes. But sometimes the very best thing in this world is just being and just existing, and we don't ever celebrate that enough. And that's what I wanted the book to be about, really, was just celebrating the fact that we're here.
And on that subject of kind of celebration and bringing the issue to the forefront, we have to talk about Express CIC because, of course, John, you're hosting a comedy night that's coming up on Thursday, the 22nd of November. It looks like a fantastic evening. As I said, you're hosting, and there's a whole host of comedians coming that look absolutely brilliant. I notice you've done a fair few things with Express CIC in the past. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the charity?
I have, yeah. They're a brilliant organisation. I did a show, when I first started doing this about 4 or 5 years ago, I did a show, and these two very quiet, very meek women came up to talk to me at the end, and they said, we've got this idea in Kingston-on-Thames, where we're based, and we want to set up this kind of, we've got a vision for it. We're going to build a coffee shop, and we're going to build it, and it's going to be for autistic children and their families, and we're going to, and you just thought, oh, this is really sweet, but they'll never get it off the ground, these two. They'll never get it. And we kept in touch, and Annette and Tracy, the two people who have founded Express, and they have worked tirelessly over the years, and I have so much respect for them. They've never taken a penny out of the organisation, and they've just built it, and they've come across a few hurdles along the way getting there, and they're a lifeline now to so many families across Richmond and Kingston, supporting them and autistic children. They run various workshops for not just for autistic children, but for their siblings and for the families as a whole. They help with a lot of the paperwork that has to be done. And they've just become really vocal on the issues. And they're a really important organisation. And I know so many families now who talk about the support they've had from Express and how they wouldn't have got as far without them. So they're a very small, very local, but a very unique organisation, and I love supporting them genuinely. It's been a real pleasure being involved and see them grow.
And John, as I mentioned, you're hosting this evening of comedy. There's some fantastic acts coming already. It's something that I know there's been comedy nights put on by this organisation before. What can people expect from a night like this? Say people who perhaps aren't regulars of the comedy circuit, or maybe have never been to stand-up comedy in their life. What would you kind of recommend about an evening like this?
I think it's just a great, for a start, the venue, the CornerHOUSE. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's in Surbiton, and that in itself is just a really unique, community-led theatre. It's very intimate, it's very small, and it's a really lovely venue. And as a comedian, it's a great venue to play, actually, and a lot of big-name comedians play there, which is quite unique for such a small venue, because it is so intimate, and it's such a lovely place, and it's one of those places where the laughter kind of rolls off the ceiling and you can't help but get involved. So for a start, there's the venue. Then there's the uniqueness of Express themselves, and it's just a very warm, friendly environment, and it's very inclusive where everyone's welcome. And there's some great comedians coming along as well. So for anyone who's never been to a comedy night, I think it's a really great introduction, actually, in a very friendly, inclusive environment.
And what's the difference for you as a comedian when you host a night like this and when you are one of the acts and say there's another host? Is it slightly different in terms of the style you have to implement?
It is a little bit. I've often said when you're hosting, now this won't be the case of this evening, but sometimes when the audience are a little bit hostile, shall we say, sometimes it can be tricky hosting, because you've got to go back. And sometimes as comedians, you'll come off stage and you'll say, oh, I wish I could just do 20 minutes and get it out the way. And sometimes as a host, you think, oh, I've got to go back onto that audience now. I've got to go back. But on a night like the one for Express, I think it'll be a real treat going back. So my role really is just to introduce the night and keep everyone laughing and keep everyone happy, and hope we all have a great time. And raise lots of money for Express, of course, as well.
It looks like it's going to be a fantastic evening. Tickets from £10, which is absolutely brilliant value when we've said as well all the kind of comedy you get and everything included. It's at the CornerHOUSE Theatre, Thursday the 22nd of November, so it's coming up fast. Make sure you get your tickets, and it's the Express CIC Comedy Night. John Williams, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, Henry.